And welcome and good morning, wherever you are across Canada. It may even be the afternoon if you're from the Far East. My name is Todd Miller, and I'll be your host for today's event. I'm Tech Canada's president and CEO, and I'm also a fellow chair. I've had the privilege to work with many leaders like yourself over the last decade, and it's been an inspiring and transformational experience for me. Today's event is an exclusive one, available only to members and, of course, our chair community. And it's great to have such a great turnout. I know that this was originally planned last week, and here we have two opportunities for this week, which I'm just delighted to be able to coordinate. We're here to discuss a topic that's relevant to all of us, the economic outlook for 2021. The data that's been gathered and will be presented in today's discussion is based on the Tech Canada CEO Confidence Index. That's a quarterly survey measuring the confidence of Canadian business leaders of small and medium-sized enterprise. The results provide insight into the challenges and opportunities faced by leaders and their confidence in the Canadian business environment. The Tech Canada CEO Confidence Index for the second quarter of 2021 was conducted from March 11th to March 31st. And we had nearly 250 Canadian participants in that research. You should have all received a copy of this report in your email this morning. And we've also included it in the handout section, which you're welcome to download. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat area as the presentation goes through. And if we don't get to your questions during that time, we'll make sure that we get the answer offline and send it to you. Now, let me tell you a bit about the man who reviews the data and provides insights and helps us with the index as it relates to the CEO confidence reports. He also delivers, of course, the Andersen economic report every month, which is available at techcanada.com. Both are great resources for the tech community. Dr. Peter Andersen is an independent consulting economist specializing in economic forecasting. He obtained his doctorate in economics from Harvard University. Early in his career, he was assistant chief of the Bank of Canada's research department, where he advised the governor and the Bank of Canada on economic conditions and the economic outlook. Dr. Andersen also spent several years with several major Bay Street investment dealer firms before founding Andersen Economic Research Incorporated. He acts as a filter, separating the signals from the noise in order to provide the clients with the most useful information that they really need. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Peter Andersen. I'm very, very pleased to be joined with you today, Peter. Thank you for being here.
Todd, thank you very much. And to everybody on the call, thank you very much for your time. I've been associated with tech for a number of years now. Perhaps some of you might have met me at some of the tech meetings that I have attended in the past. And it's a great pleasure, Todd, to be involved in this tech CEO survey. I cannot tell you how important it is to have real-time information, survey-based, because let's be honest, the traditional economic numbers, quite often they're still dated. Quite often, you'll be in the month of May and you're not getting information that's any more up to date than, let's say, March information. We have a source here of real-time information coming from our members. And I want to emphasize how important you, our members, are, because you represent the small and medium-sized business community. And this small and medium-sized business community is important. It's the source of adaptation, creativity, and also new ideas and job creation. So the message that you have given us, it's really up to date. It's as up to date almost as you can get. And it contains a number of very important messages. I won't go into them in detail at this point, because what I'm going to do in a minute is to go through my own assessment of where the economy is. But just to give you a very quick summary of our tech CEO survey, which you have participated in. First of all, the question, is the small business community falling behind? Is it falling behind? Not at all. The small business community is showing that it can adapt and adapt quickly and maybe do so faster than big companies. Another couple of points. Where is the future? Well, the tech CEO survey says that there is cautious optimism, but there's a resounding affirmation that we are on a recovery path. We also have very interesting results on the job outlook, very interesting results on inflation and interest rates, and then business practices. Our business practices are undergoing a fundamental change. So Todd, we can talk about those in detail, given the time that we have this morning. Let me start by putting things in summary overview form. Where do I see the Canadian economy at the present time? Well, my feeling is it's behind the United States, but not too far behind the United States. In the US, the results have been so positive that I can say without a doubt that the United States is one of only two countries in the world that has achieved its pre-COVID levels of economic activity. The other country would be China. So China and the United States, as of today, are the only two major countries that have been able to claim this achievement. Now, there are some other ones, but they're not big players. New Zealand, for example, is in the same position. And also Vietnam is in that position. But the United States and China are the two. Canada will be there, I believe, this year. And I would say by the end of the summer, Canada's economy will be there. And as far as jobs are concerned in our country, this ties in with our CEO indications in our survey. I believe that Canada will have a complete job recovery in numbers by the end of the summer. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is going to regain their lost job. I'm talking about the total numbers. So on an individual basis, it doesn't mean everybody will have recovered their job, but it means in total, the job numbers in Canada will be back to pre-COVID levels by September. So much of it depends on immunity. And Canada is now rolling out its vaccines at a greater rate of rollout. In the United States, it's going faster. Let me just quote a number. In the United States, at the present time, we have 171 million Americans, 171 million out of a total adult population of 256 million who have some form of immunity. That's either one or more shots or a recovery from COVID. So that's just under 70%. And the Americans will be there at 80% by the end of June. Canada is going to follow. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to be immune, but it means that the virus will have fewer places to land in terms of infecting other people. And life will be returning more to normal. What that means is mobility and a pickup in spending and much stronger economic growth, but it also means more inflation. The Bank of Canada is very guarded on what it says. And when you hear the governor say that we will be almost 3% inflation within a matter of months, you know that they are very solid in their conviction. So I do believe that inflation in Canada will test the 3% level this summer in Canada. Now, what that means is that we'll all say, what's next? Is 3% going to lead to 4%? Is 4% going to lead to 5%? That is the thinking. It's an uncertainty. The consensus view, and I use that word carefully, consensus thinking is dangerous. It's often wrong, as we all know. The consensus thinking is that the jump in inflation is temporary. The official word is transitory. That's the kind of word the central banks are using. Now, I'm worried about that. I think that inflation might not drop back down again very quickly. And the Bank of Canada is almost agreeing with that, because what they're telling us all is that they are now taking their foot off the accelerator. They're not buying as many government bonds per week as before. The numbers are staggering. They have been buying 4 billion in government bonds per week. They're cutting it down to 3 billion. That is called tapering. I think we will see more tapering announcements. And then when they finally exit from the bond buying program, then they will start to raise rates. And that's 2022. So the thinking we have that the Bank of Canada has given us guidance that with this strong economy and this opening up surge in mobility and spending, that we'll be looking at interest rate increases in 2022. And our members are thinking that way in the survey results. Next slide, please. The next slide I want to show you what's in the pipeline. Now, I could show you a lot of slides looking at commodities and materials prices, and I have chosen just to show you one, the price of copper. It's actually called King Copper because it speaks for so much in terms of its community. The spot copper price this morning is $4.50 US. It has not been this high in the last 10 years. And you can see where it's come from. It was down at $2.30 last year. So at $4.50, this is a massive increase in a key basic material. Now, it's there in so many other things. It's there in industrial chemicals. It's there in building products. It's there in lumber. It's adding thousands of dollars to the price of new homes. And it's in the pipeline because materials and commodities prices have a way of getting into final goods prices. Now, typically in previous cycles, supply picks up in response to the pickup in demand. But the trouble is, this virus is worldwide in scope right now. And while we do have diminished virus cases in the United States and soon in Canada, that won't apply to the worldwide supply chain. So supply is finding it difficult to respond to demand. And as far as demand is concerned, I had to show you China's economy because copper and China go hand in hand as partners. You can see the growth expectation in China this year, almost 10%. Now, I'm going to say something that is, what can I say? It's a big statement. I'm going to say that growth in the United States will match growth in China this year. It might even exceed it. So I've said that it's not the consensus view at the present time, but it's quite a possibility that growth in the United States will come very close to that growth bar that you see for China. Good news for Canada, because the two economies are so linked together. So it's very possible that we are soon going to be seeing an overflow of not just demand for products in Canada and demand for key for key commodities that we produce, but it's also going to affect boardroom thinking, because the boardroom thinking in the United States has a way also of flowing over the border into decision making in Canada as well. So let me show you just a few more commodity prices. I can't resist it. Here we have industrial chemicals prices. These are core prices that go into so many products. The list is very long in terms of the chemical connections. And then taking a look at the softwood lumber price, that's an increase of over 80%. But again, this is a government number for the month of March. We're now in the month of May. These were the most recent figures I could give you because I wanted to show you numbers that were produced by the government and that were authoritative. But the price of lumber has basically tripled in the United States and also in Canada as of today, going back to the lows that we saw earlier on. So these commodity prices are a big threat to the business community because higher inflation means higher interest rates. You know, money should have time value. Money should incorporate inflation risk. If you're going to give up the use of your money, if you're going to lend it for a period of time, you should be compensated for inflation because when the money is returned to you, it might not be worth as much. So that is, I think, what's coming. In terms of employment, I wanted to underline the good news from our CEO survey. We have a very upbeat response when it comes to employment plans on the part of tech CEOs. And this is what our government numbers already show us. This is our employment in manufacturing, and it's for the month of April. And you can see we are actually above where we were in the early months of 2000. So my statement in Canada that the total economy could see a full recovery in the total job numbers, I think that makes more sense when you look at that employment chart. Finally, I can't end a commentary, a presentation without talking about the Canadian dollar. Look where it has come from. Now, what I'm showing you monthly averages for the currency, except for the very last data point, because I want to show you the most up-to-date piece of information for today. Now, when I sent this diagram to Aaron, the Canadian dollar was below 81 cents. Now it is exactly 81 cents this morning. So what a ride we have been on. So for those tech members who buy products in the United States, that Canadian dollar has got more buying power, and it means that the machinery and the supplies that you source in the United States are now becoming more affordable. Why is the Canadian dollar up so much? I'm almost at the end of my comments here, but I'll say it's because the Bank of Canada is ahead of the US Federal Reserve. In the United States, they are nowhere close to taking their foot off the accelerator. They're nowhere close to tapering their bond purchases, but Canada is. And it looks like in the United States, any increases coming from the Fed will be coming later than increases in Canada. So that gets into the psychology of the foreign exchange market, means interest rate differentials look to be widening in Canada's favor. Therefore, Canadian dollar is rising. And also oil. Oil is one of the kingpins of the commodity sector. And it looks like the world oil price, which is just under $70 a barrel right now, Brent crude is just under 69. It looks like it could be passing the $70 level this summer. And Canada is a petrocurrency. It's also a commodities currency. So more to come perhaps on the Canadian dollar. I wouldn't be surprised to see it 82 cents and higher before the end of this year. So Todd, that's my commentary. Back to you.
Hey, that's fantastic, Dr. Anderson. Thank you so much for your insights, and just so informative. In a word, it feels like optimism is coming out of our CEO confidence index. I'd be curious, as you were constructing the CEO confidence index Q2 versus the previous quarter. Was there any challenge, the biggest changes? What were the biggest changes that you saw in compiling the data from last quarter to this quarter?
Well, one of the big changes was basically the question, how have we been doing? And on that question, we have been doing much better. So over the 3 months from January to the end of March, when our survey ended, our members are saying, yeah, we have done a lot better than we thought we would do. And the percentage of responses on that, right now, we have, let me see, we've got 45% of the responses were that, yes, we've done better than we thought. And that compares with only 8% 3 months earlier. So that's a big message.
Yeah, it certainly is. And when you think about maybe just the different aspects within the business and specific to the index, anything that came out relative to the government, what's your perspective on should the government be doing more? Where do you think business travel is going to go? And maybe the almighty question about work from home. I know lots of our members are talking about that as well. How do you think about that work from anywhere?
Well, it's interesting that the responses have been appreciative of the government's actions. I think that there's a bit of a regional variation in that. I think that people in Alberta feel that they're not quite as positive on the government's efforts. One of the big messages we're getting is that we have changes in business practices, and we do have work from home as something that's on everyone's mind, and also business travel. And our survey was giving us some, I would say, unexpected results on both of those issues, Todd.
And that's interesting, right? So when you think about, I guess, just the notion, obviously there's a great deal of optimism, but as it relates to pricing, a direct correlation as you think about inflation, and obviously your in your word, the consensus, which I appreciate you don't necessarily like using, but the direct correlation to pricing, our members are telling us that.
Well, it looked like our members are basically getting ready for many of them. The majority seem to be getting ready for price increases. In fact, I think it's 62% of the responses indicated that prices would be going up. And that's up from 44% 3 months earlier. So going from 44% to over 60% with the inclination to be raising prices, that's a sizable shift. So I think that's coming.
Interesting. Yeah. Dr. Andersen, I know that you spent a lot of time looking at different data points and kind of reviewing various assessments. I'd be curious, in reviewing our results inside of the CEO Confidence Index, how would you compare our information, what we're seeing, with other market assessments that you've reviewed either in Canada or in the States?
Well, a couple of things. We have, in terms of business practices, we have the narrative that working from home is going to be the big thing going ahead after the pandemic. And our members are not quite saying that. There is this acknowledgement that working from home is definitely going to be around, and it's going to be a factor, but being, quote, in capital letters, the big thing, not quite so much. We actually have more in terms of percentage responses who are saying, that working from home will not be important, then we have a percentage of members saying it will be the big thing. Now, having said that, the majority still say, well, it's going to be different than ever before. And yes, working from home is going to be something that's going to be around. But the big thing, well, it's interesting, Todd, because this challenges the narrative that working from home is the new normal and the new big thing. The other thing would be business travel. A high percentage of our members are saying that business travel is going to change and that teleconferencing is going to substitute for face-to-face business meetings and the need to travel and incur expenses with travel expenses to go to meetings. But we still have a noticeable percentage who aren't sure. So it seems to me that our members are saying that there is still going to be a need for business travel because sometimes meetings really are more valuable and more effective if they're person to person on certain critical issues where there might be sensitivities and so on. So those are two interesting things that came out of the survey that ran against, I think, the consensus narrative.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just switching a little bit into the Andersen report, work from anywhere. You got a comment on the work from anywhere versus work from home, or return to office?
Well, it's interesting. There's a regional dimension here. There's much more support for that style of work in Ontario. When we look at Alberta and Saskatchewan, yes, it's acknowledged as being a new feature, but it is not as heavy a response as what we are getting from Ontario. Ontario seems to be more focused on ahead business practices changing from in-person work to remote work, whereas Alberta and Saskatchewan aren't as close as Ontario. To me, I found that understandable, but also very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Again, you referenced it, Dr. Andersen, but I was very pleased to see kind of the sentiment from our tech members that they expect how they expect their the overall economic conditions of Canada. There's some optimism there. They certainly feel like they're going to see some increases in revenues. They expect profitability to improve. They're looking at their, as you mentioned, employee base to increase. It feels like that kind of defies some of the feelings of everyday Canadians. With accumulated debt and kind of likelihood of increased taxes coming with all these other factors. How do you respond to that? I mean, what does it defy the logic, or do you think it's in line?
Well, that's a key point, Todd, and I'm glad you raised it. When I initially said that one of the key findings was that our members are saying that things are better than they thought, when we ask them to look ahead 12 months, we still have caution. We still have a cautious approach. But when we ask them how they see sales and profitability looking ahead 12 months, we get a much more positive response on that question, which tells me that our members are adaptable, that our members are quick to respond to challenges and quick to adapt and to come up with new ideas and new approaches and to do well in this challenged environment. I also see they're planning for the future, though, and that the hiring plans are quite upbeat. We are much more optimistic on hiring plans than I would have expected. So that is the first step forward, I think, in terms of this cautious optimism materializing. My own introduction today, Todd, I was talking about where we're headed in the next 6 months in Canada and the United States. I think that is going to cause more of a reaction, a positive reaction on the part of our members. I think that, yes, justifiably, we have been cautious because of the onset of yet another virus wave in Canada and the lockdowns that have been required. But the fact that the United States is doing so well and will have such a pull, and the fact that our vaccine rollout in Canada is picking up so quickly now, I think I can't wait to see the next quarterly CEO survey. It's going to be so interesting to see how our members react to what is now in place and is happening through the current months.
That's again very optimistic and tremendous thinking. Any thoughts, Dr. Andersen, on other than what you've shared, but what might actually change that? I mean, is there anything that you're kind of, not that you stay awake at night worrying about these things, but is there anything that you're kind of thinking, boy, this could change your position of where we'll be in September?
Well, Todd, I have been making predictions and forecasts of the future for a long time. And I have to say that I think, more convinced in the outlook, more sure of the prediction than I have ever been before in terms of other economic forecasts that I've made. So yes, there's always the unexpected. We have Murphy's Law, things that can go wrong and so forth. Gremlins that can get into the system. But I am actually feeling really very, what can I say, very solid in my thinking. I do think we'll have an election in Canada sooner rather than later. And so that introduces some interesting thoughts on where Canada's public policy might be headed.
Yeah, interesting. I was actually going to ask you about that, but thanks for chiming in on that point. Just a reminder to all of our attendees today that if you do have questions for Dr. Andersen, please put them in the chat. We're monitoring that. And one question that did come in, Dr. Andersen, that would be interesting to get your perspective on. That's not necessarily referenced in the index, but just love to hear your thoughts on what do you think about the stock market these days, and how would you anticipate our members to think about the stock market conditions?
Well, I think that one message I would give is don't fight the Fed. And one of the reasons for the extraordinary performance of the stock market, and when we talk stock market, I basically just look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and to see that it's come from 18,000 to 34,000 in such a short period of time, I have to shake my head. But I understand, because the central banks in both countries have been putting so much liquidity into the financial system. This liquidity has been flowing ultimately into the stock market. So one of my warnings would be careful when the central banks decide that we no longer need emergency support. When the central banks decide that the economic emergency is over and they start to withdraw their emergency support, well, then a large part of this liquidity is going to be drained from the system, and that could have a negative effect on the stock market. So be careful. One of the things that I talk about a lot when I'm dealing with financial clients that are in the investment business is I say it's a time to really be selective. My own thinking is it's not a time to be an index investor. It's a time to use discretionary thinking and to be very incisive and selective in terms of the categories of business in the stock market that you're going to be looking at.
Interesting. Yeah. Great, tremendous input there, Dr. Andersen. We've got another question that has come in. I'd love to hear your perspective on. There is anecdotal evidence that the sky high lumber prices that we referenced earlier on are a result of supplies being held back by the mills What evidence is there to support that anecdotal thought?
Well, I think that's partly true. I think that it's the problem is supply can't keep up with demand. We've come through a winter where the winter has been made worse by COVID and the lack of workforce. So the supply chain is very much restricted. When we first got into the crisis, the virus crisis, back in uh, basically April and May of last year, um, so many lumber mills closed down because the thinking was that we were going to go into a housing crash. And not only did we have lumber mills closing down, but we also had home builders uh, closing down operations and slowing down buying plans for land and so on. So what we have now is a situation, the National Association of Home Builders in the United States has estimated that the increase in lumber prices has added, I think it's $34,000 to the price of an average home in the last year. And it's not just lumber, of course, it's also other things. It's plywood and so many other building materials. But here's my take on this, Todd. My thinking is that it's almost been like we've come through a war, and it seems that personal behavior very well could change, and there could be a real shift from rental to ownership coming out of this. And the millennial population in both countries, people that are now in their early 40s, remember, millennials are people that turn 20 at the turn of the century. And now they're in their early 40s. This is their prime home buying stage of their life cycle. I think there's going to be sustained demand from millennials who decide that they want to be homeowners rather than renters. And maybe the same too for the baby boomers, because I like to point out that there's a lot of life left in people who are around 65, the baby boomers who still have plans with real estate and who are now focusing on smaller homes with larger, more affordable space in smaller communities outside of congested big cities. And so that's one of the things that's happening. It's very interesting in Canada looking at where is the construction? And so much of the construction in Canada now is coming outside of major urban areas.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting, especially when you reference the millennials and that group that maybe our members. That's not top of mind for me as I thought about that. Right? Yeah, you're right. They're now in their 40s and they're certainly in their buying years. So that's quite an interesting perspective to add into the dimension of even the lumber topic. Another question that has kind of come in that I'd be interested again on, Dr. Andersen. So maybe it relates to the other question as it relates to lumber and what have you, but so the overall housing market, right, in both Canada and the US, based on my earlier comment, where do you see it going and anticipate continued growth, pricing continue to rise? We've obviously got a few areas in Canada that are, almost bubbles, if you will, right? But I'd be interested in your perspective.
Well, my feeling is that it's a cycle, and housing has always been a cyclical industry. And the cycle has surprised everyone, but it will be determined by interest rates. Interest rates, how high will they go and how quickly will they rise? It's something basically we don't know, but there's a big risk factor here. The risk factor on timing is more for 2022 and 2023. How high will interest rates get for home buyers looking at mortgage rates in 2023? So there's kind of a timeline. I think you can expect between now and then that this housing boom is going to continue. However, the authorities don't like it especially in Canada, we are going to see more restrictions on the rules for qualifying for mortgages. It's already started. OSFI has changed its kind of regulation on how one qualifies for a mortgage and what interest rate you qualify at. So we've already seen it made the first step towards making it more difficult to qualify for a mortgage. That has already been taken. There's a worry, I think, on the part of the central bank that the house price increases, excuse me, could have a speculative component to it, and they don't like it. And the same comes with taxation. Taxation on property owned by foreign non-resident persons. And you're seeing taxes now being applied on property that has been owned and purchased by foreign non-residents. Then the question is, how about capital gains taxes? How about capital gains taxes on housing? Well, you know, they're starting to think about making some changes in the United States on this. And you are going to see more capital gains on equity investments in the United States. We are going to be having an election in Canada, I think in October. And so some of these issues could easily flow into our own political dialogue in Canada. I don't expect to see a capital gains tax on housing in Canada, but I expect to see it talked about increasingly.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think all of our members would probably agree that the speculation is strong that in Canada we'll see an election sometime soon. Perhaps it is October. Just switching gears a little bit, another question that came in. Just when you think about capex and investments being made, what sectors do you think will be? Can we anticipate the biggest capex and investments being made within?
Well, right now, we are looking at hesitation on the part of our tech CEO members who have been surveyed. Our tech members are much more bullish on the employment payroll budgets than they are on their capital budgets. Where we do see strength in the economy on business capital spending is in the machinery, or rather, no, I shouldn't use that phrase. I should say equipment. Equipment. That is a more accurate phrase to use. And a lot of it, Todd, is in software. So I think that more and more of our members and more of the small and medium-sized business community, because we're adaptable and quick to respond, I think we're going to be looking at software and technology solutions, which would involve capital spending to contain cost pressures and to increase efficiency. The other point I'd make is the green economy. I do think we are going to be looking at renewed emphasis after the pandemic on keeping Canada green, making it greener. And to me, this implies electrification. But I'd also be quick to say, where does the electric power come from? And I think that natural gas is going to be a big player here. So the whole infrastructure of electrification of vehicles, I think natural gas and the natural gas infrastructure has a big role to play here too. So I do look upon the future in Canada this decade seeing really quite a pickup in green investments. And I also do, of course, acknowledge that some of this is non-traditional. You're looking at companies that are involved in wind power and solar power and the application of that and so on.
Yeah, interesting, right? And of course, the whole oil and gas sector, as you're referring to, I read in your report that there seems to be a sense of some degree of stabilization. Would that be a fair comment?
Well, wait until the driving season starts in the United States and you see what happens to gasoline consumption. We already have a dramatic increase in gasoline prices, and it's only May. So you have this approach in the United States to high levels of immunity, and you've got the driving season starting. And what do people do? They want to get out, and they want to have experiences that have been denied to them over now more than a year. And I think as far as personal travel, vacations, hospitality, that kind of service spending, I think a lot of it is going to be directed at in-home province tourism. People aren't necessarily going to get into airplanes or get into cruise ships, but they'll get the family car and they'll take off and they'll drive somewhere fairly close by, or maybe they'll go to province, but it'll be kind of home country tourism,
Yeah.
recreation. And so I think that's going to really affect gasoline prices and gasoline demand going ahead.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. It just, I love the conversation, Dr. Andersen, because we're kind of fluid and we go all over the place, which is obviously right in your skill set. So I'm switching gears again on you. I've got another question as it relates to the impact on commercial office real estate in Canada, and in particular in Canada, in Calgary rather, we've got 33% vacancy right now. Perspective on commercial real estate, office real estate, where do you think that's going, and how do we fix that situation?
Well, that's a very controversial topic, and you get different answers depending on who you talk to. I saw a report the other day that Google has invented the office of the future, and that a large percentage of Google workers will continue to be working remotely. But Todd, not everybody works for Google. And I think that there is a value for in-person work. And I think we have underestimated the return to in-office work that is actually going to take place. So one of the indicators is going to be the leasing market. If we keep our eye on the leasing market and see that for leased properties are showing a tightening in the supply-demand situation, I think that it'll be an indication that the narrative, the consensus is perhaps exaggerating this work from home, no return to office type of narrative. I think more people will return to office work than currently expected. So my bet is that by the end of the year, we are going to see office vacancies begin to change quite noticeably. And as we get into 2022, given the fact that we'll have an even further spread of immunity with people, I think the work from home will be a special situation thing that if it works well for individuals in the company, yes. But I think that we are human beings, and I think that there is a desire for human interaction and spontaneity, and that is perhaps a biased position that I have, but I think that there is high value to in-person, in-office work that is going to be certainly going to be picked up. So my thinking is that the office situation is going to change, and I think it's going to change more than is currently expected by consensus thinking.
Yeah, interesting. And of course, that supports your earlier comments about, kind of the change in business environment around work from home, work from anywhere, work from the office, and that human condition that you're referring to perhaps will prevail, right? Hey, just
my feeling on that is that once vaccines are available, and by available, I'm putting that in capital letters, Once vaccines are available quickly and to everyone at your corner pharmacy, and they're proven to be effective and proven to have lasting immunity. My feeling is that employers will take the approach of saying, we will now permit you to return to the office. And I think there's going to be a feeling on the part of many they don't want to be left out. If they see their colleagues returning to in-office work, I think there's a feeling that you don't want to be left out. And that, I think, is already spreading in a number of other ways with, people seeing that vaccination proof is required if you want to do something or go somewhere. That's one of the reasons that vaccine hesitant people are stepping up now, changing their minds and actually getting inoculated.
Yeah, no, interesting. And then do you think, Dr. Andersen, that because we're talking about kind of transformation, right? Where, I mean, as much as we're talking about going back to the office, it feels like it's a little bit of a transformed behavior in terms of maybe it's a combination, a hybrid environment. Do you think that will drive perhaps small business to have less space, or do you think that we're going to return to, and I know that this is speculation, but do you think we're going to return to the old space, or do you think it's going to be modified forever?
Well, I think it has to be modified, certainly in the first few years as we work out of this shock to everyone's psyche. So, I think that it takes a while for our thinking to change on this. So sure, I think that the design of offices and I think the design of office furniture and all of that is going to go through quite a radical change.
Yeah.
Because the open office concept isn't really the kind of thing that works in terms of what people think is appropriate right now. So, I mean, are we going to see the return to people actually having offices again? And of course, that takes up more space. Maybe people aren't all going to be sitting out in a company board or a company bullpen, so to speak, sitting all together around a big table. That open office concept, it might just shift back to the old days when people actually had offices that had walls and doors that you could close.
Yeah, no, for sure. And of course, as you referenced a couple of times, the whole notion of immunity and our comfort level of being back inside those surroundings go hand in hand. Earlier on you referenced. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just think it's going to take time, especially in Canada when you have 14 weeks between the first shot and second shot. I know that personally, I waited for a good 3 weeks after my second shot before I started to venture out into the community a little bit more. So I'm thinking for fellow Canadians who've had one shot and now have to wait, let's say, until the middle of August, the end of August to get shot number 2, Canadians are going to be a little bit more hesitant to get back to the good old days, I think. Because of the timing on this. And that applies to return to office work too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally appreciate that. When you think about, you mentioned earlier on, I'm just curious in your perspective on this, again, speculation, but you mentioned about how travel and holidaying, as we were talking about oil and gas pricing, and how gas prices might go up because people will be doing more traveling in Canada, and maybe that's a great thing for Canadians to go and visit their other provinces. When do you think international travel will resume to some form of normality?
I think it'll be a lot slower because one of the things that I noticed, Todd, is that the world system is in such a high infection rate at the present time. The data sources that I look at every afternoon, every evening before I close down for the day, I follow what's happening internationally to new cases worldwide, and it's absolutely shocking. So it seems to me that, our previous optimism that we had 6 months ago, 12 months ago, as to when this virus would be winding down, it seems it only gets wound down if you have the vaccination option. And trying to distribute the vaccine to, a world population of 7 billion people, it's going to be quite a challenge. So what I think is going to happen is that you and I are not going to opt for the world cruise. We're going to take home travel and have home vacations. It won't be a staycation. It's going to have a broader geographic measure to it. We won't be just staying in our own living room or our own backyard. We'll be traveling, but it will be home travel.
Well, that's probably good news for many of our members that are listening. The staycation is probably getting a little tiring for many of us. I think I've got time for one last question, and one that's maybe a little bit off topic, but I just love your perspective on it. One of our members was asking a question on your thoughts on digital currencies, and what about digital currencies? Do you have a perspective that you could share with us?
Well, Todd, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. I am completely confused by digital currencies. I know that there has been a astounding speculation here and incredible investment returns earned. So it has certainly stirred up the speculative investment pot. But let me tell you that one of my oldest friends, who's an investment professional, I asked him what he's doing recently, and he said, Bitcoin. And I said, what? What? He said, yes. I said, are you doing it for yourself personally as well as for your clients? He said, yes, for both. He said, and you wouldn't believe how much money I've made in the last couple of months. So I thought, I just shook my head and said, wow, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But a lot of people have. And this friend of mine said, there's a lot of smart people who are doing this. I still shook my head and said, no, it's way too much risk for me. So my answer would be risk. A lot of return, Todd, but remember, you've got to say, how much risk did you take to get that return? Yeah. So return has to be risk adjusted. So that's not much of an answer.
No, great perspective. That's what I love about our conversations, Dr. Andersen, is its perspective, and certainly that was I think interesting from the notion of risk versus return, right? So wonderful.
Exactly.
Hey, I know we could probably go on for even another hour, Dr. Andersen, but I know we're coming up close to the top of the hour, and I first and foremost want to say thank you. Every time we have the opportunity to kind of get together and have conversation, even some of our offline conversations that we have around hockey, I even enjoy, Peter. Regardless, it was fascinating to have your insights, reporting on the CEO Confidence Index, which is such a valuable tool inside of Tech Canada. I know that we look forward to getting the results on a quarterly basis, and I encourage all of our members that are listening to make sure that you keep that one top of mind every quarter when we're asking you to participate in the survey. It's such valuable content and information, and it just adds to this discussion, as you can clearly see from today's conversation. And in addition to that, of course, the Andersen report, which I look forward to reading on a monthly basis, that comes directly from Dr. Andersen, obviously, and some just very powerful insights there as well. So again, I want to thank everyone for participating today. Dr. Andersen, most importantly, I want to thank you for participating this morning. And I know I get the pleasure of being with you again later this week for yet another one. So I'll look forward to that. Folks, this is recorded. So if you want to take it back and have a listen to it after the fact, you can certainly do that. It'll be shared in the next member and share bulletin. Chairs, I encourage you to the hour session or even review the index. I'd encourage you to bring that into your next meeting and have a dialogue about the state of the Canadian and U.S. economy, and share some of the insights that you may have learned today. So without further ado, I will say bid you a great day. Have an awesome day, members and chairs that have joined us today. And again, most importantly, Dr. Andersen, thank you. That was just a wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd.